right, let's talk about a huge promise. Back at the end of 2023, pretty much every country on Earth got together and made one of the biggest, most ambitious pledges in the history of energy. The idea to completely reshape our global power grid in less than a decade. So in this explainer, we're going to track that promise. We're going to see if the world is actually living up to its word. So here's the big question, right? After all the headlines, all the speeches, are we actually on track? We're going to dive into the latest analysis from the International Energy Agency to get the answer. And trust me, it's way more complicated and honestly more interesting than you might think. Okay, so first things first, what exactly is this promise we're talking about? What did everyone agree to at that big climate summit in Dubai, COP28? Well, it all pretty much boils down to one single massive number. 11,000 gigawatts. Yeah, that is the magic number, and it is a colossal amount of power. I mean, to give you some idea, that's kind of like building the entire current power grid of the United States all over again, but doing it all with renewables. This is the target. This is the finish line for 2030. And look, the key thing to get here is that this isn't just about, adding a few more solar panels here and there. No. This is about tripling our entire global stash of renewables from where it was in 2022. It's a collective goal signed by almost 200 countries to hit at least 11,000 gigawatts by the end of this decade. It's a massive, unprecedented global effort. Okay, so a promise is great and all, but how do you actually track something like this? Well, you've got to look at the official paperwork. This is where countries are supposed to turn those big promises into actual, concrete commitments. All right, so the key documents we need to know about are called Nationally Determined Contributions, or NDCs for short. Basically, you can think of them as the official climate homework that countries have to turn into the UN. So if we want to see the official on-paper commitment to that 11,000 gigawatt goal, the NDCs are the first place you'd look. And right here, this is where the story starts to get really interesting. Just watch how fast these numbers drop. So of the nearly 200 countries that made the promise, 118 have submitted an updated NDC. Okay, but of those, only 53 even bother to mention the tripling pledge. And get this, only 32 actually put a hard number on their 2030 renewables target. I mean, that's a huge fall off. And this chart, wow, it just lays it all out there. You take all those official promises from the NDCs, you add them all up, and you get just a little over 1,600 gigawatts. Now remember the goal? 11,000. It's not even in the same universe. So on paper, officially, we are way, way off track. So what is going on here? Is this whole thing just a bunch of empty talk? Why is there this giant chasm between the promise and the paperwork? Well, as it turns out, those official documents, they don't tell the whole story. And that brings us to the next chapter here. We've got to dig deeper, go beyond those official UN papers, and see what's actually happening on the ground, in the actual policies and plans that countries are making for themselves. And that's exactly what the team at the IEA did. I mean, they went through the nitty-gritty of national energy strategies, policies, and plans for 189 different countries. They were trying to piece together a picture not of what countries said they'd do in a formal document, but what they were actually planning to build. This is the real ambition. And boom. This chart right here is the heart of the entire story. On the left, you see that tiny little bar? That's the official pledges. On the far right, that's our big goal, 11,000 gigawatts. But look at that bar in the middle. That's what countries are actually planning to do based on their own internal policies. We're talking 8,350 gigawatts. All of a sudden, that big goal doesn't look so impossible anymore, does it? Yeah, let's just put a number on that. The real ambition, the stuff that's hiding in national policies, it's 5 times higher than what's officially on the books. That's the difference between the official story and the real story. Okay, so where is all this real ambition coming from? Because it's definitely not spread out evenly across the globe. Let's break it down and see who's really pulling the weight here. Wow, okay, this chart tells you pretty much everything you need to know. Of all that planned growth in renewables, China alone accounts for 45%. Let that sink in. Nearly half of the entire world's plan is coming from just one country. Then you have advanced economies, like the US and Europe. They make up about a third, and the rest of the developing world makes up the final chunk. And this whole picture is a moving target. It's constantly changing. For instance, just in the last year, China raised its own goal by a mind-boggling 600 gigawatts. The Middle East and North Africa? Their plans shot up by 50%. But it's not all good news. Over in the Americas, ambitions actually dropped. And that's mostly because the US has been scaling back some of its clean energy policies. And if you want a perfect example of how fast things can change, just look at this quote from the IEA report. Saudi Arabia more than doubled its 2030 ambition. In a single report, it just goes to show you how quickly these national plans can change, way faster than the slow, formal process of updating those NDCs. All right, so let's take a breath. We know where we are now. The real ambition is way higher than the official one, but there's still a gap to reach the goal. So, the big question is, can we close it? What does this final leg of the race look like? This table is great. It just lays everything out. You've got the lowball official pledges way down at the bottom. Then you have the much bigger national ambitions. But then there's one more number to look at, the IEA's own forecast. They look at all the market trends, the momentum, and they think we'll probably hit around 9,500 gigawatts. That gets us even closer. Now we're only looking at a gap of about 1,500 gigawatts to hit that final goal. So how do we get there? How do we bridge that last gap? Well, the IEA basically gives us a roadmap. And here's the thing. It's not about technology anymore. We have the tech. It all comes down to actually getting things done. We're talking about governments making stable, predictable policies, cutting the red tape to get projects approved faster, investing a ton of money into our power grids, and of course, making it less risky for people to finance all these massive projects. So when you boil it all down, here's the bottom line. This huge global energy promise, it is not a lost cause, not even close. The goal is absolutely 100% within reach. But, and this is a really big but, it is not going to happen on its own. Getting from where we are now to that 11,000 gigawatt finish line means we have to clear some very real hurdles in policy and finance. The real question, the one we're left with, is whether our leaders have the political will to actually push us over that finish line.